Welcome, good morning to everybody. Page 155. We're going to learn now the mimer. Okay. Let's go. Vihine ezelu mazeh. One opposite the other. Oser Elokim. We have a rule. It's a rule in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism. Whatever there is in Kedusha, in holiness, there is an opposing force in klipa, in negativity. That's a rule. Zeh l'umat zeh. And why is that? Why is that, Ari? If I asked you why is that, what would you tell me? Why? Come on.
Say it again.
Why? The first words on 155 is Vihine ezeh l'umat zeh. Oselokim. God makes one opposite the other. If there's holiness, there is secularism to oppose it. If there's secularism, there is holiness to oppose that. One opposite the other. I'm asking you, why is that?
Well, there's no existence without the opposite.
There's what?
There's no existence without the opposite.
Okay, I would say differently. Free will. So he said free will. In order for man to have free will, you need to have two similar forces. That's why Hashem made Moshe Rabbeinu and he created Bilam. He gave the non-Jews a prophet called Bilam, so the non-Jews shouldn't say, hey God, it's not fair. The Jews have won over us because you gave them a Moses, a Moshe. And we don't have one. So Hashem said, okay, good argument. And he gave them Bilam. So the idea of, equal in Kedusha versus Klipa means the negative force, is a truism. And that is why when we're challenged with shtuyot, foolishness, silliness, stupidity, evil, it isn't a figment of one's imagination. It's very real. Osa Elokim. That's what I'm pointing out to you. Osa Elokim. God is the one that made the opposing forces to holiness. Why? So there should be true free will. So let's now continue. Just as there are 5 levels of the soul, so too, lahavdil is the term that we use to separate between spiritual contamination, impurity, and purity. We don't even want to say them in one breath, so we say lahavdil. Yeshhei madregas baklipa. Very interesting. We have now 5 madregos of klipa. If there are 5 in holiness, right, we've been speaking about nefesh, soul, ruach, spirit, neshama, soul, chaya, life, yechida, oneness, 5 aspects of the soul. Says that Rebbe, if I'm giving you 5 ways of connecting to God vis-a-vis your soul in a positive way, I have to challenge you with 5 ways of messing up. 5 different ways. Intellectually, emotionally, practically, and then the power of will and delight and pleasure that can go haywire. 5 different ways. The kashem sheyesh seichel v'hasoga benefesh olekis. Just as there is intellect and rationale in the godly soul, lahasig inyone likus kanal, to comprehend godly ideas, as we mentioned earlier, so too, yes seichel v'hasogol b'nefesh abamis. There is intellect and comprehension in the godly, in the animal drive. Lahasig asoges gashmim utivim, to pursue in a comprehensible way physical, material, and natural desires. In other words, the creativity and of attaining material matter is not just I want to do it. I understand it, I feel it, and I act on it. It's a very thought out process. That's what we're learning. One comprehends worldly matters. And one comprehends ways of pleasuring their body. A good sauna, a good sweat, a good workout. Those are nice gashmistika pleasures, and those are the good ones. I'm not mentioning the ones that are bad for us. We don't want to contaminate the airwaves with the shtuyot, so we'll just leave it at that. Bihispilus midosav behem. And your emotions, your midos, your character, and your midos are pleasured by these physical pleasures. So your pleasure of awe, love, compassion are all enhanced in a bad way when you allow your body to pleasure itself in different ways, which are very materialistic and heathenistic. V'zeu neshama v'ruach de klipa, says the Rebbe, these are the two aspects of the five in the negative way of neshama and ruach of klipa. Shemachshich oir haneshama v'ruach de kedusha. It darkens the light of the soul, which is what? The seichel and ruach and the spirit of kedusha. So let me just break this down for you. In kedusha you have, I understand God, how God created the world, and when I think about it and meditate, I get myself excited, and I have a feeling in my heart. I love God, I want to learn more, I want to give more tzedakah, I want to help more people, I want to be a nicer person. That comes as a derivative of understanding something with your brain, seichel. So the neshama of the nefesh elokis makes an impact on the ruach ad nefesh elokis. Here we're talking about just the opposite. I understand that sitting at the beach and getting a suntan will make me look like I went to Florida for 5 weeks. But Chaim Dalfin is sitting in this room and writing or researching and teaching, and he has no suntan. So when I come back to New York at the end of the week, they're going to say, you were in Florida? Of course I was in Florida. I was in the room in Florida. But if you go to Florida and you get a nice suntan on the beach, right? Then you've pleasured your body more. You've pleasured your body. Now, if you need the pleasure for health reasons, kol hakavod. But if you don't need it, but you just want to come back so your friends at the golf course in Long Island or in New Jersey can say, oh, Jack, oh, Yaakov, wow, you got a nice suntan. I wonder what you were doing on a beach. Right?
Today you never know. Maybe he went to a tanning salon.
Right. That's too fancy for me. I'm not up to date. I still know that the place where you get a tan is on the beach, not on tanning salon. On Avenue N and Nostrand Avenue, where they have these tanning salons today, Rahman Litzlan. Anyway, so the point being that the seichel, you had to use your brains to know to which beach. Do I go to Netanya, Tel Aviv, or dort in Caesarea? Which beach do I go to? Well, I want to go to a beach where there's less stone and less jellyfish biting my feet. I mean, whatever. In other words, it's not just I go to the beach to have an emotional experience. I intellectually decide how long it'll take me to get there, how will I get there, when will I get back, who I have to see, who won't I have to see, what will be accomplished, what will be in the water, what degrees would the water be. All of that is called seichel, intellect, logic. And you make those calculations, and after you make those calculations, you go into the water, and you have, an emotional experience. Whatever your emotional experience is, I feel it, in my old bones, you know? So the Rebbe says that everything in Kedusha is challenged by Klippa, and vice versa, everything in Klippa is challenged by Kedusha. So the words that he uses is Neshama and Ruach. And he says that the Neshama and Ruach of Klippa darkens. Look at the words, Hillel. It shemachshich, it darkens. Oir HaNeshama v'Ruach Kedusha, the light of the soul and the spirit of holiness is now darkened by the Neshama and Ruach of negative energy. And he continues. V'nefesh the yes.
Here's the question. What happens when the Gashmias and the Kedusha coincide? Example, let's say you go to the mikveh, right? You go to a nice hot mikveh, and you still have that you go in, but you're going for the mitzvah. You're going to bring yourself to be, spiritually. But again, you're also enjoying that same Gashmias.
Right. Now, that's a very, very good question, and it's a question that is asked and discussed in thousands of pages of two parts of our Torah called Musar and Chasidus. Both deal with your issue at great length, because that's really the challenge. The test is in the pudding, whether or not, when you go into the mikveh, are you going for your self-pleasure, or you're going for the Kedusha. Now, I saw my mashpia, of blessed memory, Reb Melech Tzibel, I saw him go into water that was boiling hot that you wouldn't go into. I was there in the mikveh with him. He walked in and he walked out. I saw it, okay? To me, that's a sign of someone who, cold or hot, he just goes down into the mikveh. Or frankly, clean or dirty. If you knew the mikvahs that we went to in Brooklyn in the 1970s, you would never again step into a mikveh. Unfortunately, they were very, very filthy. But I would close my nose like this, and I would just dump and run out. I did it one time. Normally I immerse 9 times in the mikveh, but, I had to go to the mikveh. So the question, Yoni, is a very good one. The answer is it's up to you. It's up to the individual. What is your feeling of going? So I'll give you, I'm sorry to say, I'll give you a personal example. In Brooklyn, when I go to the mikveh at 4:30 in the morning, right before I give you the shiur, so I go to the mikveh, and no one's in the mikveh, 4 o'clock I go usually. So I'm able to do a little exercise, because I wouldn't do that when anyone else is there. What do? I hold on and I do I kick with my feet. I get some exercise, because all day I'm not getting exercise. Okay, now it sounds very silly, but really for me, it's holy. It's Kedusha. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it so I can get some exercise, because I need the exercise. And I know I don't do it during the day for whatever reason. So at 4 a.m, when no one's in the mikveh, I spend 5 to 10 minutes kicking with my feet and making with my hands. Okay? So, what? What I'm saying is, every person they know themselves, and you're only a fool can fool himself. The Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Reb Shmuel of Lubavitch would say, only a fool can only fool himself, because everyone else knows you're a fool, right? So everyone else you're not fooling, because they know you're a fool. So who do you think you're fooling? Yourself. So you're a fool. Yes.
I think also on this issue, like many other issues, there are many gradations. It's not black or white.
Eino Chanami. Of course, but Shmuel, he's asking, a very good question. How do you use Gashmias for Hashem? And is the Gashmias that you're using for Hashem, is it really for God, or is it for yourself? And like I'm saying what you're saying, there are gradations, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. No one. In other words, you can go to the same mikveh. For one person, they feel the hot water in their bones and they're pleasuring themselves. And for another person, they're doing it for holiness. So no one can legislate that upon you. But that is actually, if you had to boil it down, that's really the whole avodas Hashem of our entire lifetime. When we eat and it tastes good, what are we interested in? The taste? Or is the taste because God wants us to taste it that way? And you should know, in Chabad, in Lubavitch, this was something that we were trained in the yeshiva, and to use the rest of our lives, or better said, to analyze ourselves, not to fool ourselves and convince ourselves that what we're doing is really for God, but the truth is, it's not that. You know, I'll give you a story that I remind myself now of big Hasidim. I'd rather not say their names because they're known families in the Chabad world. So they were sitting at an event in Eretz Yisrael. This is the 1940s, I believe, at a simcha, and two big Hasidim. They were talking Chasidus, and the meltzer, the waiter passed. One of them was so engrossed he didn't even notice the waiter. The other one noticed him. He said, "Put down a portion here." So I heard from my teacher that in that little awareness, you saw the difference between the two in their not commitment, in their ability to focus on Chasidus, on the learning at the time, where one didn't even realize there was a waiter walking by, and one realized. Okay? So, this is very, like Shmuel said, it's gradations. But you are allowed to study these gradations and apply it to yourself. Do I eat because I enjoy the food and I'll make a bracha with a slow bracha, saying every word and thinking about the meaning of the word? That's a great level. Halavai, we should begin with that. But then there's even a deeper level. A person's taste is not that he doesn't taste it. He tastes it and tastes it for holiness. And this is, we can talk about what the Gemara says. We have to even say Chasidus. What the Gemara says, there are three or four gradations of having relations between a man and a woman. And the Gemara says, someone who is working, he has relations once a week, because all week out he's working and tired, not around pretty much. A Talmud Chacham, a scholar who is not busy working, the Gemara says, should have more relations. How do you like that? Why? Because he's not busy. He's not busy, but he's learning. Thank you. But at night, he has a wife, and he should procreate if he can. Again, it's a Gemara. This is not Chasidus. It's a Gemara. What do we see? We see that the Gemara takes into consideration one's job. One's job. So all of this points to that Gashmias needs to be elevated and used. So I'm not proposing, and the Rebbe is not proposing, we shun Gashmias. That's the whole difference between the Baal Shem Tov of Chasidus and Musar. Chasidus says, take the Gashmias and use it for Hashem. Musar says, separate yourself from the Gashmias. Right? Both are valid approaches. Both need to be learned. Both need to be used. But overall, there is a general difference. Let's continue in the Maimon now. For Ikirhu, and he says, the nefesh the klipu ma'isa hara atzma sheisa b'poil. Now he goes to the third aspect of the neshama, called nefesh. And he says nefesh of klipa, because we just discussed, right? What did we discuss, Boaz? The neshama of klipa and the ruach of klipa. Now he deals with the third, what we call nefesh the klipa. What is the nefesh of klipa? Hu maise hara. It's the actual bad deed, the maise. Atzmai. She'oise b'poel. That he does in actuality. Not he intellectualizes, and not he's emotional about it, but rather he acts upon it. For ikir mashem masbias atzmai rachmon litzlan. And the primary negative way of expressing this is that he satiates himself You see, Yoni, he pleasures himself, Rachman litzlan, God forbid, b'taiva soilam hazem, with worldly pleasures. V'hinei, b'his gabrus, and that's why you should know. You could look around. There are people that Hashem has blessed them with wealth, and if you look at the ones that are really Oiv the Hashem, you won't really notice it, because they don't pleasure themselves with Gashmias. They're not ostentatious. You know, every one of us knew what a Shmuel Nainu Yud Betel. I always repeat because I saw him, and he's a life lesson for me. Beryl Weiss was a Jew who God blessed with a lot of wealth, and yet he lived simply. He didn't live fancy, and he didn't act fancy. Yes, he had a nice house, a regular house. You know, he bought it probably in the 50s, 60s, whatever, and that's it. And I know people that got in Brooklyn. So the idea is not to masbia. I like that word, masbia as atzmai. To satiate yourself, God forbid, b'taiva soilam haza, with worldly indulgences. V'hinei, b'his gabrus oir haneshama, the nefesh elikis, when the soul, when the nefesh elikis overpowers the nefesh abamis, v'ruach v'nefesh hamistayfa mimenu, and it overpowers, when the seichel of the nefesh elikis overpowers the emotions and the actions that come from it, ha-mizbatel ha-nefesh ruach neshama de lekipa, it accomplished that it annuls, it obliterates the soul, spirit, neshama. Look how he has a hyphen in between the three words. Ha-nefesh, ruach, neshama de klipa. They all can go fly a kite. What is the initial reason? Very, very important words coming up now. That the nefesh abamis can get to us. It's because we lack in service of God. If one were to involve himself in godly comprehension, and in meditation, and arousal of ava v'yira, of love and fear of God, if that's what you were busy with, that person and that individual that engages in these three activities of his boneness, two activities of his boneness and his odorous, will not at all have in his life darkness of the nefesh abamis. Why? A simple rule. Because light pushes aside darkness. Verak, let me finish, please. Let's look inside. Verak, mipnei heder or avoida, it's only because there's a lack of service of God, that the godly light goes to sleep. It's concealed, it's hidden. That causes the overpowering of darkness of the nefesh abamis. So the answer is, you know why the nefesh abamis gets in? Because we're lazy and we don't want to work hard. We want to just have, like the Rebbe said in 1951, a good day, a good party, you know? Take it easy. No, man was created, what does it say? Adam la'amo yulad. Man was created to work. Work is toil. Toiling and working and effort and diligence is the best for us. Verak. Nevertheless, now he says like this. Even if initially you acted in a way that's lacking avodah, nevertheless, you can reintroduce into your life avodah in which the nefesh elikis will wake up from its sleep and start overpowering the nefesh abamish. Why? Shari haseichel v'hasoga, the nefesh elokis, masigim gam kein b'seichel nefesh abamish. He gives a very interesting logic. He says the nefesh abamis, true, its main guide is emotions, but it has some seichel too. And if you can challenge it intellectually, you can get it to wake up and say, there's something more than, sitting at the beach and wasting my time. What was I created for? Just to play golf all day? Or just to eat and eat and eat? Or sleep and sleep and sleep? No. So you have to challenge it. So when the Nefesh Elikis is reintroduced, even though initially you didn't do Avodah, but now you start, then you could challenge the Nefesh Habamis' intellect and mind. Sharei HaSeichel v'Hasoga, the Nefesh Elikis, Masikin Gam K'tiv Habamis, v'Onoroim, and we see, Shegam Begashmias, Kasher Oske B'Muskolis, Harim Meruchet Mitayvas Elam Hazeh. The Rebbe says, the previous Rebbe says a beautiful thing. We see people, not necessarily Jewish, or even if Jewish, not involved in Torah, if they are occupied with what's called muskolos. Muskolos are intellectual ideas, higher thinking. Those people, like I told you yesterday, that professor that I knew, he can come in wearing two different color socks and the pants are short and he looks like, he's from a different planet. Those people are distant from Taivas, right? Taivas, pleasures, don't talk to them. Because they are engrossed always in muskolis, in higher thinking. Rak. The basichli magashmim liyosim yeshu mitzias. However, we must know that since Gashmi's physical thoughts and ideas of intelligence, even of higher intelligence, since they are still what we call a yeshu mitzias, you hear this, Ari? There's still an existence and an entity. Al Kain, Hinisof, Kol Sof. At the end of the day, Boli de Taivas Gashmias. And it's so true. Here, Aristotle, the paradigm of intelligence was caught in uncompromising position, etc. And they said, what the heck are you doing, Aristotle? This is so unbefitting to you. And what was his answer? At the time, I wasn't Aristotle. Now, what does that tell you? And that's exactly the point that Rebbe is making here in the Maimer. Exactly. That since his intelligence was not seichel of holiness, it was seichel of gashmias, it was human intelligence, at the end of the day, it's bound to gashmias and it will lead to gashmias. Now, it doesn't mean it will lead to what he did, but it will express itself in gashmias and in raw gashmias, such gashmias that's not holy. I'll leave it to your imagination. Let's continue. Avo bahaskola elikis. But when it comes, look at this, Boaz. When it comes to comprehending Hashem, when your mind is engrossed in godly understanding of a piece of Gemara, or a halacha, or a piece of Chasidus, a piece of Torah, etc., museg is gam b'seichel ativi. What happens is the human natural mind is also engaged. But you see the difference? It begins with God and it extends itself to nature. Whereas with Seichel and Gashmi's physical intelligence, it begins with nature and it extends itself to God. But the result is, since it begins with nature, it ends with nature. When you begin with nature, you also comprehend the goodness of godliness, and you come to a conclusion that, what I should want, what lachbots, what I should desire, is God and not physical material things only. It says the Rebbe, this makes a weakness. It's schwacht up, as the Yiddish schwacht up. It makes weak the nefesh habamis. The nefesh habamis should not spread its kochos, extend its kochos. Shu inyan iskafya. This means to subjugate, to control. Be a little horse, not a big horse. have a little gaiva, not a lot of gaiva. You know what I mean? So by contemplating on godly ideas, you introduce into the nefesh habamis something more lofty and more sophisticated, and the nefesh habamis says, listen, at the end of the day, I'm an animal. I'm a nefesh habamis. But I won't be such a big animal. Says the Rebbe, okay. That's a good beginning. Eloid Payil, then comes even more so, Shmuel. Ruvain, it's called Hisapcha. Not only do you not eat, and this is your point, Yoni, this is your point now. Not only do you not benefit from the Gashmias, you transform it. Poel Gam Lehipuch, you do just the opposite. You transform the negative darkness of Nefesh Habamis to holiness. Now let me ask you a question. Can this be said, say for example, I used to listen to someone who used to listen to non-Jewish, non-kosher music that Rav Moshe Feinstein writes is forbidden to listen to. He gives a halachic ruling. Can someone say today, I became a Baal Teshuvah, and I'm going to daven l'chododi and Friday night at the Karlbach Shul with Elton John's song? Or Bob Dylan's song? The answer is the two don't go together. They just don't. So that's why a Jew like Reb Shlomo Karlbach, who was an original composer, who was a Yid who came from the world of Torah, so his music and his songs were pure. And the same for other Jewish composers. Hasidic, Litvak makes no difference if they're coming from that perspective. Not if they're taking non-Jewish music and just putting Jewish words to it. So I'm using this as only an example. When we talk about transforming darkness, negativity to Kedusha, some people convince themselves. I'll give you another example. Today it's popular in shuls, kiddush clubs. Then they have something called a pre. I forget what they called it before Kabbalah Shabbos, before Shabbos. They drink. They have l'chaim. Or, like I told you, back in Marin County in the 1980s, there were a few people that would smoke up. They would get high Erev Shabbos so they can dance by l'chodoidi. Okay? Now, I'm not going into the discussion whether marijuana is better or worse than alcohol. That's not where I'm coming from. But I'm saying the whole idea of you needing to be excited about davening, and so if legitimately, if marijuana, say, for example, is mutter, is forbidden, is the Rabbanim say today it's mutter. If they ever come out with such a psak, which I doubt they will. I'm not talking about medical marijuana. I'm talking about, pleasure marijuana. So, if you could legitimately say to yourself that you're doing this because you're down and depressed and Shabbos is coming and you need a push and it's kosher, not if it's not kosher, okay. But if that's not the case, which by most it isn't the case, but you just want to be loose and wild and cuckoo and just do whatever you want, there's no justification. That's not what we're talking about here. So this is a very, very delicate issue, and it definitely touches upon, and like Shmuel said, there are gradations, and that's why many rabbis do not put an end to the Kiddush clubs and things like this, because of the gradations. Because there are some people, they would not come to shul at all if they wouldn't be able to have a Kiddush club. So the rabbis and the Gaboyim and the congregation made a decision that as long as they're not being harmful and they're doing it in a kosher context of a shul, outside of the shul, in the basement, the kiddush room, and it's balanced, okay. I was in Tel Aviv a few years ago, and I saw plenty of professional Litvak shul, one of the big shuls in Tel Aviv. And while the rabbi was speaking upstairs, the main president invited me to come down. He says, we're going to have a Kiddush club now. Come say L'chaim. So I went down with him because, I came there for him. So he invited me, and it was nothing, it was very balabatish. And in fact, they asked me to say Dvar Torah. I said a Dvar Torah, I said a story and a lesson, and I used it for an opportunity for something Kedusha. So what I'm saying is that these things have to be looked at very carefully, and there is no black and white. And anyone that makes it black and white is going to have issues. So what Shmuel said earlier about gradations is very, very true and very important. And every case has to be looked at. Let me just finish. The Hainu, finish here. Okay, we'll stop here. Any questions, or that's it?
Gentlemen, I see we have a minion. Anybody, can 10 people stay? We'll make a minion.
Make a minion.